All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Have you ever thought about how a complex text is actually built a whole lot like a physical building? I mean, when we read, we usually just focus on the surface story, right? But today, drawing on some really incredible analysis from Dr. David Bauer, we're going to examine the actual architectural blueprints of literature. We're going to uncover how the physical structure of a book is actually the primary vehicle for its underlying message. It's a total game changer for how you read.
Now, you might be wondering, how does an author tell you what's truly important without just typing, hey, this is the main point? We're so used to looking at the literal words on the page, but I want to challenge you to look beneath that surface for a second. How did they guide your emotions and build their ultimate argument in total silence?
Well, Dr. Bauer hits the nail on the head here with a concept that's simple, but honestly absolutely profound. Writers communicate meaning through placement. The actual architectural form of the book, what comes first, what gets repeated, what gets the most real estate on the page, those are the secret tools authors use. The big takeaway here? You literally never have content without form.
So here is our blueprint for today's explainer. First, we'll look at decoding book structures. Second, major structural relationships. Third, the pivot of cruciality. And finally, the direction of meaning. Let's get into it.
Okay, starting with Section 1, Decoding Book Structures, or the foundation of linear progression. When you're reading straight through a book chronologically, you're essentially playing the role of a literary detective. What you're looking for is a shift of emphasis. This happens when one major theme just abruptly drops off and is entirely replaced by a new one. Maybe it's a sudden pivot from describing historical events to laying out ideological arguments. Spotting these shifts tells you exactly where one foundational block ends and a brand new one begins. And that brings us to a brilliant concept called quantitative selectivity. Let's look at the biblical book of Amos for a second. When you actually map the whole thing out, the massive amount of space devoted to Israel just completely dwarfs the brief litany of judgments on the surrounding nations. To put that into perspective, in an ancient world where texts were read aloud, the audience spent over 3 times as long hearing about one very specific subject. The author is basically using sheer mass to point a giant neon sign directly at their primary target. Moving on to Section 2, Major Structural Relationships, which are basically the load-bearing walls of a text. So one of the most common load-bearing walls is recurrence, or repetition. But, and this is absolutely crucial, to be considered a major structural relationship, it has to meet 3 mandatory criteria. First up, frequency. It has to happen more than once, obviously. Second, distribution. It needs to be spread throughout the entire book, not just crammed into a single chapter. And third, importance. It's got to carry some heavy thematic weight. I mean, just repeating the word "and" a bunch of times doesn't make you a literary genius, right? But when a core concept hits all 3 of these, the author is virtually shouting at you to pay attention.
And recurrence isn't just for single words, it applies to whole thematic structures too, like contrast. Take the book of Proverbs. It uses this constant recurring contrast between wisdom on one side and foolishness on the other. That is no accident. This recurring contrast is the load-bearing wall, perfectly built to carry its central message, by forcing you, the reader, to constantly weigh these 2 paths against each other. A text's load-bearing walls can also build toward a climax. It is endlessly fascinating to see how 4 different authors can use climax to communicate 4 totally distinct messages. Even though the 4 Gospels share a lot of the same source material, each text reaches a completely different culmination point. Mark peaks at the cross. Matthew builds to the Great Commission. Luke focuses structurally on the ascension, and John culminates with the resurrection. The architectural peak reveals the unique priority of each specific author. Which brings us right into Section 3, the pivot of cruciality, the hinges and doors of our structure. Now, cruciality is way more than just a simple shift in topic. It is a radical reversal. Think of it like the ultimate plot twist in a thriller movie, a dramatic hinge that the entire story just violently swings on. When a text uses cruciality, everything that follows the pivot completely undoes what came before it, and usually that's because the pivot itself acts as the direct cause for that massive change in direction. The Book of Esther is a perfect example of this. The first 4 chapters set up this doomed, absolutely terrifying movement to destroy Mordecai and the Jewish people. But then, right in chapters 5 and 6, we hit the hinge. Queen Esther's pivotal appeal to the king. And because of that single pivot, the text radically reverses. Instead of destruction, the enemies are defeated and the Jewish people are exalted. The ultimate message is embedded directly into that structural whiplash. All right, our final section, Section 4. The direction of meaning, or zooming the lens.
Authors meticulously dictate the direction of their meaning by either zooming the literary lens in or zooming it out. Zooming in is what we call particularization, moving from really broad general concepts down to something incredibly specific. Zooming out is generalization, starting with a specific detail and then broadening way out to a wide global scope. Recognizing which way the author is turning that lens completely changes how you interpret every single passage. Genesis does this particularization, zooming in effect so brilliantly. The text starts out with this massive, wide-angle lens focused on the entire cosmos and the whole human race. But then, starting in chapter 12, the narrative lens shrinks drastically. It zooms past the rest of the globe directly onto the land of Canaan, and then pinpoints one very specific man, Abraham. The structure itself is making a theological claim. This one man has a unique role intended for the sake of all humanity.
On the flip side, look at the book of Acts, which uses generalization to slowly broaden its geographical witness. It starts extremely specific, focused entirely on Jerusalem. Then the lens zooms out a bit, expanding to Judea and Samaria. Finally, it zooms out completely to encompass the ends of the earth. The structure literally acts out the overarching message of the book, this unstoppable, expanding outward movement of the gospel.
So stepping back and looking at all this scaffolding, whether it's a massive shift in emphasis, a load-bearing contrast, a dramatic pivot, or the zooming of a literary lens, the structure really is the message. It absolutely proves Dr. Bauer's golden rule. You never have content without form.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge to really look beneath the surface. Now that you know exactly how to spot these architectural foundations, what hidden clues are you going to uncover the next time you crack open a book? Will you spot a radical reversal, or maybe a zooming lens? Keep your eyes open, because the true blueprint of the story is always right there waiting to be decoded. Thanks for exploring this with me.